Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of CampusCare Edtalks. Edtalks is a platform where educators and leaders come on board and express their viewpoints related to education and society. A topic for the discussion is student suspension or expulsion, and does it help? And to express their viewpoints on the same, we have with us Mrs. Amrita Burman Ma'am, Deputy Director of Sunbeam Groups of Educational Institutions, Varanasi. A very warm welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a privilege being here.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for taking out your precious time. So let's start off with the session now, ma'am, shall we?
Yes, surely, surely.
So, ma'am, what are the effective ways of maintaining decorum at school?
So I think the topic is it's a very very interesting topic. Reason is that people feel that if you expel or suspend a child, the problem gets sorted out. So I will come to it whether expulsion and suspension is the right way. Should it be used or not in a little bit of time? But I think the most effective way of maintaining decorum in a school would be, first of all, to define the acceptable behavior in a school. A child who comes into the school or even has been studying with you for some time doesn't really know that this is the norm of acceptable behavior. So I think one is it should be very clearly defined. It should also be clearly defined in your prospectus, in your almanac, so that parents should actually talk to kids even before the children step into school that, this is what is the expectation. So one is to define it. The other thing is, after a definition, and it should be printed everywhere, as I mentioned, there also should be sessions with the students. Students should know these are the do's and don'ts which are acceptable in my school. I should do this or I should not do this. Because if I do this, it's not right, and therefore I can be reprimanded for it. And then there are chances that children don't do it. Many a times, children also go into certain unacceptable behavior because they don't know what is the right acceptable behavior in the school. So I think defining it, talking about it, taking sessions, and another very important thing, everybody then exercising and being a role model in that behavior. Give a very small example, which I keep telling my teachers and my students too, that shouting and screaming in school is obviously not allowed. It's not an acceptable behavior. It's something very simple, but it's not acceptable. But what happens is sometimes teachers themselves lose that or break that little barrier and start screaming and shouting themselves in the class. And then when a child does the same, you want to reprimand the child. So if you want this to be an acceptable behavior, you also have to be a role model. So I think the most important thing in an institution is write down, talk about, follow acceptable behavior everywhere. Chances are less that children would break this norm.
Definitely, ma'am. So moving forward, when we speak of, the suspension, so do you agree with the suspension or expulsion policy, ma'am?
So actually, I don't really disagree with suspension and expulsion because I have also done it, and I think many schools have to do it. But the fact is, it cannot be the most acceptable way of handling discipline or decorum in the school. So when does suspension and expulsion come up? I think that should be one of the last things. When a child has broken any rule or has been indisciplined in the school, what is it that you're doing? So I think the first and the most important thing is there should be levels to it. The teacher should be the first point of talking to a child, counseling a child, finding out why did it happen, speaking to the child, and probably leaving it there. It should not immediately be brought up to the level of the principal, because anything that comes to the level of the principal obviously gets magnified, gets a little bit, at a much higher level. And I think it also brings down the decorum of the principal to get into every little thing. And it also gives power, and it also gives certain amount of, authority. I would say power is not a very good word. Authority to the teacher. So the levels are important. children should be spoken to. After which, if it still continues, obviously it has to probably come to the level of an academic head, coordinator, whatever is your second rung of
Yeah.
authority in the school. What we do is sometimes counseling to first find out why this behavior happened. Why is it that a child did something? The child is given enough of time to speak his or her mind out, let us know why it happened. Besides that, there are times when a child is just left to himself to think over the wrong behavior. We also ask children sometimes to write what we call a reflective journal. Sit down, just analyze, write down why is it that you did something? Could you have done it better? Could you have handled your behavior in a much, much better way? Another thing that should be kept in mind is before any expulsion or suspension, the past records of a child must be checked. So, obviously, as a CBSE school, we all have our anecdotal records. It's important to see what has been the past record of the child. If the child's behavior has been good, it has suddenly come up. Again, counseling comes up in a much bigger way because you need to then find out why is it that sudden change of behavior has happened. Maybe something has happened in the school, maybe something has happened at home, his personal life may be getting impacted. So it's important also to check the past records of children. And I think it's very important for us as teachers not to be judgmental. Every time a child does something, the child cannot just be caught by the neck. So it's important that we should first just step aside and also check, as I mentioned, why. And you can't always start with ye to aisa hi hai, ye to aise hi karega. That's something that children don't like. We can't be judgmental. And another important thing is if a child has made a mistake, has improved, then I think that space must be given to the child where a teacher or the system completely forgives and forgets. You can't go on. तुम पिछली बार भी ऐसे किए थे अब भी तुम ऐसे करोगे. You can't do that with children. You have to believe that every child can be better. So I think these are the basis of counseling. When you said, do you think counseling helps or it should only be suspension and expulsion? So I think counseling is very important, keeping all these things in mind. Coming to suspension and expulsion, which was your first main question, it is not that we have not suspended or expelled children. We have. And believe me, suspension has also worked because at times, after repeated reminders, repeatedly telling a child that, improvement in behavior is needed, if it doesn't improve, suspension for some time has to be done. This is also for the benefit of the child. Sometimes the child has to be made to realize, being out of a system, how important that system is in the life of the child. And even if that doesn't work, then yes, very rarely children are expelled from the school. Because if you continuously keep accepting wrong behavior in the school, the message you send to the others is that wrong behavior is accepted. So you create an environment of speaking to children very positively, getting them to come into right behavior, but it's not always about being good. Sometimes the child may view your behavior not to be good right now because it troubles him, but he will realize that it's for the good for him when he looks back into the system and realizes that these are the things that have really helped him in shaping himself into being a much better human being.
Yes, ma'am. Very wonderfully explained by you. And yes, we can all agree to this that students should get counselings and warnings before getting, suspension or expulsion. So moving forward, ma'am, do you think suspension or expulsion of students is it a correct way to handle, student breaching the code of conduct?
So, as I just mentioned, when the code of conduct is broken, the absolutely severe way is a suspension or expulsion. There are a few things that I mentioned that we could obviously keep in mind when we counsel our children. We should not be judgmental. We should be speaking to them. We should understand the why of of a mistake being made by the child or breaking of the rules happened by the child. I think one or two other thing which is important is rather than just suspending and expelling a child and considering that to be the right way of handling a breaking of the code of conduct, we could also think in terms of children who are on the fringe, children who are breaking rules. There is many a times they're attention seeking. They possibly are going through a phase where they're trying to draw the attention of people around them to themselves. Possibly they haven't been doing too well in academics or other things where people have been admiring them and clapping for them, and so when they don't get positive attention, they look for negative attention. So I think it's very important for us, if we realize that there are some children who are on the fringe and are giving trouble, can we now change the negative attention to positive attention? Can we involve them in more and more activities? Can we give them some small responsibilities? Can we give them some leadership positions, which maybe the risk level is small, but wherever the child does something good, we catch them doing something good, give them this positive attention, clap for them, motivate them, praise them. I think a lot of times children who are sitting on the fringe manage to change and come back into good behavior. Let me give you one very small example. I remember some years back, and this is a very personal thing. It's not something that the principals or the teachers did. This was a time when I was the principal of one of our branches, and I had a child studying in one of the other branches, and the principal kind of said, "I just can't handle this child. It's becoming very difficult, and I think we need to ask the child to be expelled." So I got into the case. I spoke to the child. I tried talking to him, but it didn't really help. So then I thought, okay, let me give the child a chance. Let me transfer the child to one of our other branches. And then I personally took up the case of the child in the other branch. And I asked the group of teachers from the previous branch and the present branch that, okay, tell me, what is the child really good at? What does he do besides? Maybe he's not very good in his studies, but he has to be good at something. Let's try and tap that talent of the child, because I think he's looking for attention. So we realized that the child was a very good tabla player. Okay, I still remember the name of the child. I don't want to mention it here. But the child was a brilliant tabla player. So then I called the tabla teacher. I also called the class teacher, academic head, everyone. I said, you know what? I think we just need to ignore the other part of the child. And what we need to do is give him extra help in this, make him even better, make him do performances in the assembly, put him up on Facebook as one of our prodigies who's been a good tabla player, etc. I think it will help, because his negative energies will get channelized into the positive side. And believe you me, that child today, it's been almost 8 or 10 years that the child has passed out from the school. The child is a brilliant tabla player, never gave us trouble. And in fact, today, the school is proud about putting the child up as an alumni who is shining in the world of tabla, and never ever gave us trouble. In fact, the child is very thankful to the institution that we gave them an opportunity, give the child the opportunity to shine. So, if you put children into positions where their positive energy is channelized and the negative energy kind of dies down on its own. So, suspension and expulsion is one of the last things. I think these are better ways to try and improve the behavior of children.
Yes, ma'am. So, ma'am, there is a question that what would be the consequences if the student would have get expelled or suspended? What do you think are the consequences when a student get
The
expelled or
consequence, the consequences are usually obviously not very good,
yeah.
because a child feels very demotivated, feels he's useless, he could not become a part of a system. At the end of it, most of the time, you don't really need to expel, because children do tend to realize the importance of the system and the system trying to tell them to improve. Now, the consequences can also be that bad behavior gets even more, the child really feels that if people are not going to accept me in this system, I might as well become even worse, because maybe then I can be much a leader in a bad world. So the consequences are not usually very good. That is why we don't try and expel children too often. If we do expel a child, the child and the parents are left on a very positive note, with this aspect always in mind, that you brought us to this end. I would have loved to continue with you. I would have loved that you would have been a good example for the rest. But then, since you're continuously breaking the rule, I'm actually making you into an example for the rest, because I can't take in this behavior. Otherwise, how will I maintain the discipline in the school? But it can be two pronged. It can also be that the child at the end of it realizes, because he's been asked to leave a good system, so he feels that maybe when I go to another school and another system, obviously the child is also encouraged to continue studying. We don't want to bring the child to an end where that's the end of his life. That is why expulsion is something I don't really stand with at all. I think it's very damaging to a child's, his complete life gets affected by it. So I'd never recommend that. But when the child moves to another school, I think he understands the value, because he doesn't want to repeat the same thing again. He's been through a lot of trouble and now understands the value of good education, good schooling. And there are many times when children come back to me, even if they've passed out from another school, to say, I'm glad you took this action, because it changed the way my life was. And today I'm doing so well, and I'm so and so, and whatever the profession of the child has been. So, yes, the effect is not very good. Therefore, it should be used very, very sparingly, very sparingly.
Thank you, ma'am. That was really, wonderfully explained by you. So, lastly, do you think other than suspension or expulsion, detention is the right step to deal with the students, breaking the rules? How do you
So,
see?
if you talk about detention in terms of failing a child, I guess that's what you mean. That you detain the child in a particular class and you feel that maybe this is going to impact. We never do it. In fact, I tell my principals, at times there are recommendations that, this child isn't doing so well. So, do you think that we should keep the child back in the same class? And I think academic performance and behavior are two different things altogether, and should be kept in two separate boxes, because I have seen children being brilliant in academics and yet being problems when it comes to behavior. So there have been times when we tell children that you've been brilliant in your studies, but if you're not equally good in your behavior, then we may not be able to continue with you. So if you want to bear the fruits and get a good name because you're academically very good, great. You also have to have great behavior. Your personal behavior in school has to be great. So never do I recommend that a child should be detained because of his or her behavior. Academics and behavior needs to be completely kept into separate parts. It should not be got together. One cannot have the impact on the other.
Thank you so much, Amrita ma'am. So, do you have something to, share with our viewers? We are getting a very good response from, students in the live chat about, the suspension or expulsion, how they can deal with it, and anything you would like to
See,
share.
I think as educators, it's not anything new that I'm going to say.
Yeah.
All of us educators are very positive, understand the fact that in every child there is hidden someone and something whom we can bring up and, kind of bloom them and blossom them and make them into good individuals. Many a times, we as schools, as educators, as teachers, we are not very good to our children. We don't have the time. We're just racing. I want to finish my curriculum. I have to finish my syllabus. And then we get so detached from the fact that it's not so much about the syllabus. Of course, that's one part. I don't want to undermine that. But it's so important that we touch the souls of children. I think I have seen the best teachers are those who may be academically very sound, but those who just take a little breather, sit back, talk to their children. When you have a beautiful connect with the students, when you believe that every child can be better than what he is today, he can be better tomorrow. When you believe in the qualities of students, in the skills of students, and believe that there is a good child in every child has the potential to improve, to do better. So I think we need to be child centric, very understanding, very empathetic, and most importantly, connection with the students, talking to them, getting the best out of them, talking to their parents, keeping a good connect with their backgrounds and their personal lives, I think is very important. And I think it's not very tough. Each of us can avoid a situation where there would be any a role for suspension or expulsion of a child. I think that's not something that I recommend at all unless badly needed.
Thank you so much, Amrita ma'am. I hope the audience enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you so much again for being here. It was really great to have you here, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mehek, and thank you so much, Intab. It was a pleasure talking to each one of you all. I hope it's going to help you in making you shaping up as a better teacher. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And for the audience, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe our channel for more stuff like this. Thank you, ma'am. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too. Thank you.